Hey guys, Andy back here from Mediocre Hobbies coming at you with my tournament review. You guys have been following along with my progress as I've been painting up this Bretonnian army for the first tournament for the Old World that was held in Ireland. I attended it last Saturday. Today is the Monday of this week, and what can I say? The tournament was awesome. So like I said, you guys followed the progress as I got this army painted. I did in fact get the entire army fully built, fully painted, fully rebased, movement trays, everything done. I was really pleased and really proud to put this army on the table and play it against three awesome players over the course of the day. The first player that I came against was a Warriors of Chaos player. He was a little bit more inexperienced than probably a lot of the other players there on the day, so we decided to take it quite slow, went about trying the rules out, making sure that he knew what was going on. And then I tried to do some silly things. So for instance, my Knights Errant got the first charge of the tournament and smashed straight into a unit of Chaos Trolls turn one. I kind of expected the Knights Errant to get mauled by a horde of hungry trolls. But they did in fact manage to win combat by one chase and run down the entire unit, which was a pretty successful thing. I'm sure it's going to go into their little battle logs. They're going to go away and tell the glories that they charged down a unit of Chaos Trolls, which of course further their progression into becoming perhaps maybe Knights of the Realm. So that was a really cool, fun game, and the game progressed fairly similarly from there. Unfortunately, the Chaos Warriors were too small in number with blocks, and the maneuverability of the Knights with the units of Pegasus and the Baron did unfortunately lead to the ultimate downfall of the Chaos player. And unfortunately, all I lost was a couple of Knights Errant. So it was quite a successful game for me. It was a major victory for me in the end. I got 1,150 victory points to his 0. So that was game one. Game two saw me face off against a Wood Elf player. This was by far the thing I was dreading the most across the event, was coming across a Wood Elf player. I think they're going to be the bane of Bretonnian players the world over, especially with the arrows that give you AP2 as standard, which means you are going to be cutting through the armor on Knights fairly easily. Now, unluckily for this particular Wood Elf player, he decided to take the true fletch arrows, which are the ones that don't allow you to have penalties for moving and long range and all that kind of stuff. So he's hitting a lot more of his shots, but he doesn't have the punching power to go through Knights. Having said that, this guy was a much more experienced player. He was measuring everything to a T. You know, I could charge one unit, which would fall back, and I couldn't countercharge into the next unit because he had it all measured out perfectly. So it was a much trickier fight. Unfortunately for him, we were playing the breaking point mission, which is basically all you have to do is get to a quarter of your starting your unit strength. So your unit strength across the entire army, you get a quarter to that, and the game ends immediately, and the victor is that. Well, not immediately, at the start of the next turn, whatever. So he had lots of kind of chaff units which were there to kind of redirect and change and kind of pull my army apart, but I just saw those as free points basically to kind of work towards the objective of that particular mission. So that's what I did. I started charging Pegasus into Eagles, and my Bretonnian Lord ended up coming back and fighting his Lord on his Eagle. Unfortunately, the Baron is a lot stronger than that, and eventually I just took down all of his small units, which just left a couple of big blocks at the end for a bunch of my Knight units to charge in. The most notable charge of the game was, of course, my Grail Knight with my Damsel charging into his unit of not Wild Riders. What are the elite version of that? I can't remember, but the elite version of the Elven Cavalry. These guys are blenders on horses. They're terrifying. But luckily for me, I managed to get a pretty gnarly spell off, which gave me a 5-up regeneration save on top of my 5-up ward save on top of my armor save. So he did get an absolute boatload of attacks through, and luckily for me, I managed to save absolutely every single one of them, which meant that he was kind of left out in the wind. The Grail Knights got to attack and basically butchered them to a man, which was the real breaking point of that game. So by the end of that game, I had lost my unit of Knights Errant, which had been shot and fled off the table. Cowards. And every other unit was still intact on the table. So yeah, for me, that was another major victory. Obviously, I broke him. I don't think that mission should be played in tournaments, having said that, because the way we played it was, obviously it's to the death. So the mission specifically states that unless you both break on the same turn, if you break on the same turn, then you use victory points. Otherwise, it's just a crushing defeat either way. So we just played it as 1,000 points to nothing as the victory. Every table in the tournament played it exactly the same way. So whoever won that game got 1,000 points. Whoever lost got 0, which is big swings in tournament play. I definitely think it should have probably still been worked out by victory conditions. Whether that would have changed anything, I don't know, but it was. I think it's important to do that. So either that mission gets left out of tournaments, or they tweak it a little bit to make it a little bit more, I don't know, tournament-y, if that makes sense. So it was another crushing defeat, or crushing victory for me. And then the third player that I played in the event was a Tomb Kings player. This guy definitely knew what he was doing as well, playing on the old 9th Age ETC team for the last kind of 6-7 years. So he never stopped playing fantasy. He had all sorts of crazy stuff for siphoning power out of his tomb swarms to empower all of his spells and do all that kind of jazz. He was definitely doing a lot of pre-measuring, which he's allowed to do, of course, to get units in the right range, to make sure that I couldn't charge this way and that way. And I decided that what I was going to do was I did not want to let him control the pitch of the game. So I decided very early on I think it was literally turn 1, I decided to just give my Bretonnian Pegasus Knights as like a sacrificial unit, and I charged them straight up the middle of the board and smashed into his tomb swarms. The idea of just removing them from the game so he wouldn't be able to siphon any power from them. They would destroy them, overrun, and hit his unit of carrions, which would, of course, the Pegasus Knight should be able to deal with those as well. He wasn't really in a position to countercharge them with anything too dangerous. I did still think the Pegasus Knights would eventually die, but I would have removed a lot of his fast-moving, kind of annoying unit that would be getting in around behind my blocks of knights and being a pain, and it really did work out. The units were both wiped out, and then he was just left kind of befuddled. He couldn't get a lot of his spells off, and then units just started to smash in and smash through. Eventually my Pegasus Knights, my Baron, did manage to break through his lines, hit his big unit of skirmishing archers at the back, which had all of his characters in it, wiped them out, and then he started to crumble almost immediately. And before I knew it, it was game over turn 3 with me not having sustained basically a single casualty. I lost 1 Knight Errant and 1 Grail Knight, and he was completely tabled, which gave me a total score, I think it was 1,300 victory points to 0, which did in fact mean that I actually took away the win for the first tournament ever held for the Old World in Ireland, which I thought was pretty cool. I think I deserved it with the amount of work that I put in with this army. The army performed absolutely beautifully. What can I say? I couldn't be happier with the performance of the game. A lot of people were surprised when they started asking me about my list, and I literally said, what you see is what you get. I have no magic items. I didn't spend anything on anything weird. No virtues for bosses or characters. The Damsel is a level 2 was about the only upgrade I got. Everything has commands, but then that's it. So it is a Baron with a lance and a heavy armor on a Royal Pegasus. You've got 10 men at arms, because you have to take them in the list that I ran. The standard Bretonnian list requires you to take at least 1 unit of peasants. One of the cool things that did happen with the peasants in the second game against the Wood Elf player was he had his Wood Elf Lord on Eagle swoop in and charge into them, obviously trying to remove some points for me and bring me close to my breaking point. He did manage to lift 4. I took a very good leadership test. I managed to hold, and my Baron on his Royal Pegasus managed to swoop back in from the middle of the table, hit the Wood Elf Lord and wipe him out, which I thought was pretty cool because those two shared the same livery. They're all painted with the red and black with the axe symbol. I can't remember the bloody Baron or whatever he's called. There's a specific house for that, but it was like he came back to save his boys, which I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, the 10 peasants, literally men at arms, 40 points. What are you going to do? 6 Knights of the Knights Errant, apologies. They did pretty good work as well. They were a nice, cheap and effective unit for charging in. People are still scared of them. They still had a 3-up save. They still had the Blessing of the Lady. The Impetuous thing, I got it wrong right at the start. I thought Impetuous was, you just took a leadership test, and if you passed that, then you were good to do your own thing. I did not realize it was a lot more harsh than that. On 1, 2, 3, you must charge if you can, and a 4, 5, 6 unit decide to do what you want. So obviously they're a lot more impetuous than I thought. It was something I will definitely have to take into consideration in the future to keep them under control, or else they're just going to run amok and do their own thing. My 5 Grail Knights with my Damsel were definitely maybe not the unit of the tournament. They were amazing though. They crashed, whatever they crashed into died. Whatever crashed into them pretty much still died. Their counter charge came in clutch a few times, and they were just absolutely amazing. Very proud of the paint jobs as well. Them I did all through Grail Week, so I loved it. Knights of the Realm did what Knights of the Realm did. They're like Knights Errant, except not impetuous and a better weapon skill. So these guys were awesome at smashing in and doing some damage. And I think the unit of the tournament for me is going to go to my Pegasus Knights. Now, the first time I played with them, I thought they were a little bit lackluster because I forgot to have Furious Charge. So in this game, in this tournament, I did not forget they had Furious Charge, and they absolutely ran amok. I ran them up flanks every time I got a chance. I hit sides of units, I picked off small characters, small units, basically just diminished all of the screening units and chaff that the enemy players had. And then by the time it was kind of late game where combats were starting to happen, they were swinging around the back end from the behind, hitting flanks and hitting rears of units and doing some serious damage. So all in all, for 1,000 points, there's nothing I thought did poorly. There's nothing I would change about this list for 1,000 points. I absolutely love it. This will definitely be the backbone of the force that I'm taking to Warhammer World in April for their first Underworld tournament. Underworld tournament for the Old World tournament. I did actually manage to get tickets for that, which made me very happy. And I'm basically going to be taking this force plus 500 points. I have no idea what I'm going to do for the next 500 points. Potentially more Pegasus Knights. Potentially some magic items for the Baron. I don't know. Maybe you guys can have some suggestions. What do you think a 1,500 point Bretonnian list should look like? But all in all, the Old World did work very well as a tournament game system. I don't think it should be designed for a tournament game system. But I think if I want to get a lot of games in, I think that's probably going to be the way I'm going to do it, is attend as many of those kind of events as I can, play a bunch of different players and have a great time. If you get a chance, I recommend you attend an event near you for the Old World, get a bunch of games in. Hopefully you don't lose too badly to some people and feel bad. Obviously, I think if you go to a tournament, say, as long as you win one game, I think you're going to have a pretty good time. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents. That's how the first Old World tournament went for me here in Ireland, and I'm eager to get stuck in and do some more. So yeah, it was a pretty solid result. I hope you guys enjoyed this little bit of a review of the Old World tournament that I did attend. I will show some pictures the whole way through if I can get them off my phone for you guys and fit them into the appropriate place. And yeah, it was pretty awesome. So thank you guys so much for listening to this little bit of a ranty video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you give the video a like. Ask me any questions you want about tournament play or any of the units or how it went in the comments below. I will get back to everybody. And make sure you subscribe to the channel for more Old World goodness. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video, guys. I'll see you in the next one.